Welcome to the brand new BMW M2. It's currently the smallest and cheapest M car that you can currently buy, but it's also got all the ingredients to be one of the best. So there's a 3-litre straight-six engine up front, there's drive sent to the rear wheels, and in the middle there's the option for a 6-speed manual gearbox, and that makes it the only M car that you can currently buy in the UK with the option of an H-pattern shifter.
In short, this M2, like the one that came before it, could be an injection of the old school into BMW's now rather untraditional range of M cars. It's compact, it's light, and it's accessible to everyday buyers like you and me.
Or at least that's what it should be. You see, the problem is this latest M2, the G87, is actually quite a bit bigger than the one it replaces. So it's longer, wider and taller than the previous gen M2, and it's actually 11 centimeters longer, so that's quite a bit. And it's also exactly the same width as a current gen BMW M4. The weight has also grown. It's now around 1,700 kilograms, which is about 180 kilograms more than the previous M2 when that came out in 2016. And the price tag has ballooned accordingly. You now need about £65,000 if you want to buy one of these things in the UK.
For that, however, you do get more power, up to 454 brake horsepower, and toys from the M4, including BMW's 10-stage M traction control. On paper, it looks as though the M2 has just become an M4 that's a little bit smaller, a little bit cheaper, and a little bit slower. But is that really the case? And if it is that a good thing?
Well, let's start by talking about the engine, because it's essentially a detuned version of the S58 3-litre twin turbocharged straight six that's in the M4. And by and large, that's a good thing. Now, obviously, this isn't as quick as an M4 competition because it's about 50 brake horsepower down all told, but you do actually have the same torque figure, and this is about 100 kilograms less. Even so, I reckon when you're really pulling through all the gears, like you would on a motorway slip road, for example, you are going to notice the difference. It doesn't have that endless surge of power. But on a road like this, where we're just going between second and third gear, it doesn't feel that far off at all. I mean, 0 to 62 miles an hour is just over 4 seconds, and it feels entirely believable, perhaps even quicker.
It also encourages you to go looking for the higher revs, something that the S55 motor in the previous M2 competition and CS didn't do. The engine sound is a little fake and it isn't much to get excited about, but the muscly power delivery and quick responses give the engine a different character to previous M2s.
And the fact that you can still get it with a good old-fashioned manual gearbox is deeply, deeply satisfying. It's got that BMW rubbery feel, which I'm not quite sure why they do that. It is a bit strange, but aside from that, the changes are nice and consistent. They're precise. It's got rev matching, even if it's not the most consistent rev matching. Sometimes it doesn't work, but it does feel nice and meaty, and that kind of fits in with the rest of the car. And here's something a bit strange. I remember in the days when you would pay extra to get the automatic or the DCT gearbox. Now you're paying £450 more to get the pleasure of changing gear yourself. I mean, it is worth it. It does add to the character of the car. I'd 100% get it, but it seems a bit strange that you're paying more to do more.
There's no doubt about where your money is going when it comes to the beautifully built cabin, however. BMW's designers have balanced buttons with screens and made the M2's interior feel genuinely luxurious and fit for purpose. For example, the 14.9-inch central infotainment screen houses a huge amount of functionality, including setup options for the two M drive modes. Activated by the two red buttons on the wheel, drivers can adjust damping, engine response and even brake pedal feel. Again, it's very similar to the M4's approach.
The good thing is though that there's still room for the M2 to have its own personality aside from the M4, and that's most evident when you get into a corner. It might be the same width, the same track width as the M4, but it's got a much shorter wheelbase. And the effect of that is that it just feels more willing to rotate, it feels more agile. And while you've got that monster front end and stability from the M4, you kind of feel like you want to have more fun with this. I feel inclined to drive this thing harder than I ever have in an M4. Doesn't quite feel like it suits that car's personality. And this, you want to just go faster and faster.
And while the M2 also borrows the M4's 10-stage traction control and drift analyzer, it doesn't demand that you drive it in a way that puts you on first-name terms with your local tyre fitter. It will do big slides, but there's a greater satisfaction to be had from surfing the balance of traction and on-throttle rotation to get you through a corner. Helped by the active diff and 50-50 weight distribution, the whole car feels exceptionally mobile.
It might not be a traditional sports car, but I am really enjoying this. It's that much less intimidating than the M4, despite its size not being as different as you might want. And it just allows you to exploit it, or feel like you're exploiting it more on an average road and an average day. And that's got to be a really key point with a car that is designed for you to have fun in. It's certainly different, but in terms of what it can do, it's taken a step forward from the old M2. There's no doubt about that.
Trouble is, these days, whenever someone makes a performance sports coupe in this price bracket, it's always going to go head to head with something like this. It's a Porsche 718 Cayman GTS, and annoyingly for the M2, it's only a few £1,000s more in cash, and it actually works out cheaper if you're buying on finance. However, the 718 Cayman is now 7 years old, and as a result doesn't have the same tech-laden interior as the M2, and if we're being honest, it might even be seen as an overly obvious choice. But then, there's a reason they're so popular.
In fact, there's several. I've been driving the Cayman for a while now, but it actually only took me about 500 meters to realize that this car has a number of strengths over the BMW. I'll start with the steering. It's an electromechanical setup, and it is nowhere near as quick just off center as the M2. And that means that it feels a lot more natural and a lot more intuitive. And what you might lose in front-end pointiness, you gain in high-speed stability.
The M2's lightning-quick steering is very accurate, but it often feels like the rest of the car can't quite keep up with the front end. It's not the end of the world, but the Porsche steering feels less contrived and more natural. The wheel itself is also nicer to hold, and predictably, it has a lot more feel.
And speaking of feel, this 6-speed manual gearbox is sensational, utterly sensational. Whereas the box in the BMW is something that you grow to get used to and begin to appreciate, this is spot on right away. It's light and easy to use, yet also positive and direct, so you can do fast changes, you can do slow changes, blip on down changes, or you let the car do it, it's up to you. It doesn't matter what you do with it, how you drive it, it is a sensational gearbox. The only thing I'd say is I wish that second gear wasn't above 70 miles an hour, so you're basically breaking the national speed limit in the UK in the second ratio, which encourages you to do naughty things. But aside from that, it's damn near perfect. It really, really is. And you know what makes it even better? Is that it's attached to a 4-litre flat-six engine that sounds like this. At 394 brake horsepower, it's about 50 bhp down, on the M2, but the power to weight ratio swings it right back in the Porsche's favour. This is basically a detuned Cayman GT4 engine, and while the M2's engine is pretty good, this is just in a different league. The responses, the low-down torque, the way it races to the red line with that noise. What an engine. What an engine. It's old school excitement with just the perfect amount of performance. It's not just good for a sports car, this engine, it's good for any car.
Thing is, the Cayman's power deficit doesn't really mean that much when you consider that it's 300 kilograms lighter than the M2. In fairness to the BMW, the gap doesn't feel that big, but the result is a handling experience that's more neutral and incisive. Indeed, you could argue that that means it's less fun and perhaps even a little bit clinical, but for me, the Cayman again pulls clear of the M2 for how it works with the driver's inputs.
If you've bought an M2 and you're feeling a little bit demoralised at this point, then don't be. It is a very good car, there's no doubt about that, and it is awesome fun. But as a performance car, this thing, it is utterly sensational, and I don't see how anything, let alone the M2, could beat it. However, if you're looking for a sports car, kind of GT hybrid, the M2, it does have some advantages.
For example, it has back seats, of sorts. The refinement is better as there's less tyre noise, the interior is way more up to date, and it's more spacious. And as I've said before, it is a less obvious choice. There's a novelty factor to the M2 that you'll never get with the Cayman GTS. However, when all is said and done, there is a clear winner here.
Now obviously this test has been an awful lot of fun to produce, but it's also been very interesting because while the Cayman is the clear winner, there is a bit of a debate as to whether it's a true rival for the M2, because there's a big difference in size and weight, and also in how they feel. They're kind of polar opposites. But then if this isn't a rival to that, then what is? Because the price is similar. They're both performance cars with similar performance. They're both rear-wheel drive. They've both got 6-speed manual gearboxes. So apart from the BMW M4, which can't really be a rival, then what is the equivalent to the M2 if it's not this? But at the end of the day, the Cayman has the better engine. It's got the better gearbox, better steering, better sound. And it also feels a lot lighter on the road because it is, and that's never a bad thing. The BMW M2, to its credit, is perhaps more usable because it's got the rear seats and it's also a bit more refined on the road. It's got a more up-to-date cabin, it's very good fun, and it is a bit less obvious than this. You'll get more looks in the M2 for its novelty factor than you will in the Cayman, and obviously that matters to some people. But for me, if I had the £70,000, it is going to be the Cayman every single day. This car is utterly phenomenal. It's arguably the best Cayman that you can get. I absolutely love it, and it is the clear winner over the M2. But what do you think? Let me know. Is this the car you'd pick? Is it a proper rival for the M2? Let us know in the comments section below.